It was the winter of 1995. The streets of small towns across France were beginning to glow with warm holiday lights. Families were gathering. Trains were packed. Shops were buzzing with last-minute shoppers. The air was cold but filled with excitement. For 19-year-old Seline Figar, this was meant to be a special trip. She had packed her bags, said goodbye to her parents, and left her quiet home in Besançon, full of anticipation. She was heading to England to spend the holidays with her cousin, a country she adored, a family she cherished, a reunion she had been looking forward to for months. But what began as a simple journey across borders soon turned into every family's worst nightmare. Because somewhere along that road, somewhere between the Channel Tunnel and the English countryside, Seline disappeared. No one saw her again. No phone call, no message, no goodbye. She vanished without a trace. And what followed would become one of the most chilling murder investigations in British history. A case that gripped two nations, shocked investigators, and left an entire family shattered. This is the story of Seline Figar. Seline Figar was born on May 23, 1976, in the quiet town of Besançon, nestled in the rolling hills of eastern France, not far from the Swiss border. It was the kind of place where time moved a little slower and life was rooted in tradition. She was raised in a warm, close-knit family. Her father worked the land, a proud, hard-working farmer. Her mother kept the home. Together, they created a safe, loving world for their children. Seline, full of life and curiosity, grew up surrounded by nature, animals, and the rhythm of the seasons. She spent her childhood helping out on the family farm, feeding chickens, collecting eggs, and running barefoot through the fields with her siblings. But even in that simple life, Seline stood out. She was thoughtful, responsible, and kind-hearted. Her friends described her as sweet and quietly ambitious. A girl who dreamed beyond the borders of her small town. When she was just 14, a family visit to the United Kingdom changed everything. She stayed with her cousin, who managed a hotel, and from the moment she arrived, something clicked. She fell in love with the country, the energy, the people, the opportunities. It was a spark that would never fade. Back home in Besançon, she poured herself into her studies, focusing on accounting and hospitality, determined to return to England one day, not just as a visitor, but to live and work. She admired her cousin, who had built a life there, and hoped to follow in her footsteps. And by the age of 19, she was already making that dream a reality. Seline had spent time working in England before, gaining experience, confidence, and deepening her love for the culture. That Christmas, December 1995, she was heading back to the UK once again. Not for work this time, but to spend the holidays with her cousin. It was supposed to be a joyful reunion. A warm, cozy Christmas in a country she adored, surrounded by people she loved. She packed her bags, said her goodbyes, and boarded the train with a smile on her face. But no one could have imagined that this would be the last time her family would ever see her. It was the morning of December 18, 1995, just a week before Christmas. The air was crisp and festive lights flickered in shop windows across France and the UK. Seline Figar, 19 years old, cheerful and hopeful, left her family home in Besançon with her suitcase in hand. Her journey was simple, familiar. She'd done it before. This time, she was traveling to Fordingbridge, a small town in southern England, to spend the holidays with her cousin. But that winter, Europe was gripped by transportation disruptions. Trains were delayed, some canceled altogether. Still determined to make the trip, Seline accepted help from a family friend, a truck driver named Roger N. who was heading toward the Channel Tunnel near Calais. He offered her a ride to Folkestone, on the other side of the Channel in England. From there, she planned to travel by train or bus the rest of the way, about 150 miles west, to her cousin's hotel in Hampshire. Everything seemed fine. Nothing unusual had happened. She was last seen boarding the truck with her small suitcase, wrapped in a winter coat, a shy but excited smile on her face. It was a journey she had looked forward to for weeks. But then silence. That evening, her cousin waited by the hotel phone, glancing out the window again and again. But Seline never arrived. The hours dragged on. Still no sign of her. No call. No message. Nothing. Worried, her cousin phoned Celine's parents back in France. "Have you heard from her?" she asked. They hadn't. That's when the panic set in. By nightfall, the family reported her missing. They knew something was wrong. This wasn't like Seline. She was punctual, responsible. She would never simply disappear. Within hours, the French authorities were alerted. British police joined the effort. A rare and urgent cross-border investigation was launched. Two nations, bound by concern and confusion, scrambled to trace the movements of a young woman who had, somehow, vanished into thin air. There were no obvious signs of foul play. No evidence left behind. Just a missing girl. A family in anguish. And a growing fear that something terrible had happened. As investigators traced Celine's movements, a picture began to emerge. The family friend, the first driver, confirmed he'd dropped her off safely in Folkestone, the English port town just across the channel. It was early afternoon. Seline, calm and determined, was eager to reach her cousin's hotel in Fordingbridge before nightfall. At the truck stop, she met another French trucker. He, too, was headed west toward Newbury. Not quite her final destination, but closer. He offered her a ride. She accepted. They spoke during the drive. She was polite, optimistic. She told him she planned to call her cousin from a payphone once they stopped. And when they reached Newbury, she did just that, walking over to a public telephone booth and dialing the number. But the call didn't go through. Maybe it rang out. Maybe it never connected. Either way, she never spoke to her cousin. Now stranded in a town without a train station or local transport, Seline was stuck once again. She had no mobile phone, no maps, no backup plan. Seeing her predicament, the second driver asked around, trying to help her find a way closer to Fordingbridge. That's when a third man stepped forward. Another trucker. He was described as around 30 to 40 years old, with short blonde hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He said he was headed toward Salisbury, just 30 minutes from her destination. He offered her a ride. To everyone around, it seemed like a generous, even logical offer. Seline thanked the second driver, got into the third man's truck, and that was it. She was never seen again. The second trucker would later tell police. Something about that man felt off. He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the tone of his voice. Maybe it was a look in his eyes. But something made him uneasy. Still, at the time, there was no clear reason to intervene. And by the time that gut feeling began to gnaw at him, it was already too late. Seline Figar had vanished. As the days passed, hope began to fade. The public and Celine's family clung to the belief that she might still be alive. Police worked tirelessly, creating a composite sketch of the mysterious truck driver. The image was shared across media outlets, hoping someone, anyone, would recognize him. The public response was overwhelming. Fears grew. Had Seline fallen into the hands of a serial killer? Rumors swirled. The same man who had offered her a ride, could he have been responsible for more than just her disappearance? Authorities feared the worst. It was known that a series of violent murders had already been committed in the region, and there were chilling similarities between Celine's case and others. But the case seemed to stall. The clock ticked relentlessly. Hundreds of officers, volunteers, and investigators searched day and night. But no answers came. Not until December 29th, 11 days after her disappearance, when the break finally came. A hiker walking along a remote road near the town of Ware stumbled across something that would change everything. There, hidden in a patch of undergrowth by the side of the road, was Celine's body. Her clothing was missing, taken by her killer, perhaps as a trophy or to obscure her identity. Her belongings were nowhere to be found. The discovery shocked the investigators. But what was found next would shake them to their core. The autopsy report revealed the unthinkable. Seline had been assaulted, beaten, and ultimately strangled. The brutality of the crime was staggering. But there was something even more chilling. The forensic team concluded that she had likely been dead for no more than 24 hours before her body was found. Had she been kept alive, held captive by her killer for days? Or had her body been carefully preserved, a macabre method to hide the true timeline of her death? The questions only deepened. The answers were nowhere to be found. As the investigation took on a darker turn, every detail, every clue, seemed to lead into shadows. And yet, despite all the searching, the truth remained elusive. Who killed Seline Figar? And why? The killer's identity remained a mystery, leaving behind only a haunting, unanswered question. The second truck driver's memory of the white Mercedes, a truck with a refrigeration unit, became the key detail that sparked the next phase of the investigation. It was a small, seemingly insignificant piece of the puzzle, but it would lead to something much bigger. Authorities quickly mobilized, launching a massive search effort. For the first time in British history, a mass DNA collection effort was put into place. Over 5,000 drivers, many of them truckers, were tested, their DNA collected as part of the investigation. The public response was overwhelming. Most drivers complied without question, eager to help find the person responsible for Celine's death. But one driver stood out among the rest. His name was Stuart Little, a 36-year-old delivery driver working in the same region where Seline had disappeared. He seemed an unlikely suspect at first, but when a coworker recognized him from the composite sketch of the man who had last been seen with Seline, everything changed. Stuart Little wasn't just a name in the investigation, he was now at the center of it. The police moved quickly, bringing him in for questioning. But it was what happened next that would raise even more suspicion. Little refused to provide a DNA sample, an action that immediately set off alarms. In the days that followed, investigators discovered even more troubling details. His truck, the white Mercedes, was tracked back to a delivery route that closely matched the area where Celine's body had been found. The pieces were starting to fit together. But despite all the mounting evidence, Little maintained his innocence. Was he the killer? Or was he just another person caught in a web of suspicion? As the investigation closed in, the tension grew. Stuart Little had become the focus of the hunt, yet the truth remained out of reach. The killer was still at large. Would Stuart Little's DNA reveal the truth? Or would the killer continue to slip through the cracks? As the investigation tightened around Stuart Little, police turned their attention to his truck. What they found inside would shake them to their core. Blood, Celine's blood, was discovered on the interior of the vehicle. The evidence was undeniable. But it didn't stop there. In Stuart's garage, investigators uncovered a collection of items that belonged to Seline, her personal effects, her belongings, items that she had been carrying when she first disappeared. Everything was pointing in one direction. But the cracks in his story were just beginning to show. Stuart had kept a driving log, a record of his routes and stops. When police carefully examined the log, they noticed something strange, a suspicious gap in his schedule, a time period that conveniently lined up with the exact moment when Celine's body was dumped. At first, Stuart continued to deny any involvement in her death. He stuck to his story, refusing to admit any wrongdoing. But as the walls closed in, he faltered. When confronted by a witness who had seen him that day, his story began to unravel. Stuart's defense shifted. He admitted to picking up Seline, but he claimed their encounter was consensual. He insisted that everything that happened afterward was mutual. No one believed him. His explanation didn't hold water. The evidence was too strong: the blood, the missing belongings, the suspicious gap in his log. Yet still, the police needed more. Then another witness came forward. This time, they described seeing Stuart burning something near an old warehouse, a detail that raised the stakes even higher. When police searched the area, they found the last piece of the puzzle: Celine's underwear, soaked with blood, a chilling confirmation of the horrifying truth. Now, there was no denying it. Stuart Little's attempt to cover his tracks had failed. The pieces had come together, and the story he had told was falling apart. But the truth was clearer than ever. He had taken Celine's life, and her death had not been an accident, it had been the result of something far darker. As the investigation deepened, the haunting truth came into focus. Investigators believed that Stuart Little kept Celine's body in his truck for a horrifying 10 days, hidden, cold, and lifeless, lying silently in the back of his cab. During those agonizing days, Stuart continued as though nothing had happened. He went about his usual routine, delivering goods, making stops, doing his job. But behind the wheel, a dark secret was hidden. And even more chilling, he celebrated Christmas with his wife and children just as if life had gone on as normal. While the world celebrated the season of joy and peace, Celine's body remained unnoticed, tucked away in the back of a truck, frozen in time. The contrast between the life Stuart presented to his family and the cold reality of what he had done is almost unfathomable. For 10 long days, Celine's loved ones waited in agony, hoping for any sign, any call, any hint of where she was. But Stuart's life continued unaffected, at least on the surface, while Celine's future was tragically cut short. The truth would soon become clear, but the devastation of what had happened was already etched into the hearts of those who loved her. Seline Figar was just 19 years old. She was kind. She was smart. She was full of dreams. Dreams that were meant to take her to places she had longed to visit, to a future brimming with possibilities. Her life, bright and full of promise, was stolen in the most horrific way by a man who hid in plain sight, wearing a mask of normalcy. Her story didn't just shake one country, it shocked 2 nations. France, where she was born and raised, and Britain, where she had hoped to build a life. Her story serves as a heartbreaking reminder of how a single decision, a fleeting moment in time, can change everything. The choice to pick up a stranger, the decision to trust, the moment that led to the unraveling of a life, and the pain that echoed in the hearts of everyone who loved her. Rest in peace, Seline. You may have been taken too soon, but your memory will never fade.